Okay, we're back now in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 2, the Christmas story. And if you remember, the Christmas story begins the locations of things. In chapter 2, there's two primary locations of the events. It starts off in Bethlehem. And as you know, what's the significance of Bethlehem?
The birthplace of David, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the city of David, the king. And again, that's an emphasis for us. This is where Joseph is in the lineage of David. This is going to be a fulfillment of the promise that God made to David that a king would be forever on his throne. So Christ is here. Jesus is the son of David, fulfilling that. He's given birth, and the only thing we're told, it's in one sense, it's kind of a boring telling of the story. It's not. They just go to Bethlehem to be registered, and they have a baby. And there's one sign that is given to Mary that's notable here, and is going to be shown to the shepherds. What's the one sign that they're given?
The baby in swaddling clothes.
Yeah, he's
lying in a manger.
This firstborn son will be wrapped in swaddling cloths and laid in a manger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the angels will tell the shepherds. This will be the sign for you. You'll find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And if you remember some of the foretelling of that sign, what that's the mangers, what they looked like in the first century, and the swaddling clothes, if you remember what that was sort of foretelling.
Of his tomb.
Yeah, of his death and burial. It's like that's how Luke will describe his burial. They'll wrap him in cloths and they'll lay him in a tomb cut out of stone, which is exactly what a manger would have been at that time, stone box. So here we have that, and then we have the next scene. So the angels appear to them, they see him, they go back, they tell everybody. Later on, we skip ahead now a few days later, and we have the next scene with Simeon, and this now takes place not in Bethlehem, but where is these next scenes taking place?
Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, yeah. In particular, where in Jerusalem are these happening?
Temple.
In the temple. And the next few scenes, Simeon, who is this prophet, possibly a priest, but he's a prophet who has been told that he would see the salvation of Israel. He comes in at the right time in the temple and sees the baby and testifies to Jesus in the temple. The next scene also is going to be in the temple. And the last scene in Luke chapter 2 is also going to be in the temple. So, yeah.
Now, it's amazing to me that Bethlehem means house of bread.
Mm-hmm.
And Christ said, I am the bread of life. Yeah. Even from the get-go, he's in the house of bread.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Literally a bun in the oven here for the Lord's salvation. Here we go. So let's take a look now at we talked about Simeon last time and his prophecy about him, that he would be a light to the Gentiles, he would be glory to the people of Israel. And he also speaks to not only that this is the Savior, but he says something very significant at the end. What does he say to Mary after he prophesies about Jesus?
The sword will pierce your soul as well.
Yeah. Yeah, this child will be bringing the fall and rising of many, and it will be opposed, kind of reflecting, you can see the cross coming up now, and a sword will pierce your heart too. Many hearts will be revealed. By the way, that revealed is interesting because we talk about the apocalypse. Apocalypse means the revealing. That's what the purpose of what makes the apocalypse so frightening is that everything is now revealed, and you see what's really happening. You see all the players, and it's being revealed, set up for a day of judgment. And this is going to be now hearts are going to be revealed. And that's what we're going to see as Jesus comes into situations. He will reveal, just by his very presence, you will begin to see who it is that God is pleased with and who it is that he is opposed to. And you thought you knew who was who the good guys were and who the bad guys were, until Christ comes, and then you begin to realize, some of the good guys are really bad guys, and some of the bad guys are actually the good guys that he is calling to himself. So let's pick it up there. So we're still in the temple, and there's one more scene now, and that's Anna. So let's take a look at that. 36 to 38, just a quick scene here. Teresa, would you get that for us? 36 to
Sure.
38.
And there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years, having lived with her husband 7 years from when she was a virgin, and then a widow until she was 84. She did not depart from the temple, worshiping with fasting and prayer day and night. And coming up at that very hour, she began to give thanks to God and to speak to him, to all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about Anna here.
Okay, Michael, could I just ask something? Have you
Yeah.
started the recording? Because usually my computer says we're recording and it hasn't.
I did restart the recording.
You did?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, it is recording right now. So,
Okay.
all right. Let's talk about Anna. What are we told about her? There's a few details about her before anything else. What do we know about this Anna?
He's been single for a long time.
All right, she's a widow. For how long?
Well, it says she's 84 and she only lived with her husband for 7 years, so.
Okay, so she's an old widow. Lived with husband for 7 years. So this has been many years that she's been. I'm assuming she's from when she was a virgin. So she was probably a girl. So she was.
Mm.
This could be, gosh, it could be like 70 years a widow.
Decades, yeah.
You know, maybe not that long because it would have been, let's say, 60 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a long time to be living in that kind of state. And what else are we told about her before we even told that about her?
From the tribe of Asher.
All right, so she's from the tribe. She's the daughter of Phanuel, whoever that is, from the tribe of Asher. Now that is a little significant here. Asher, what is that? Do you know what that significance of that is, of Asher? As opposed to, I mean, if you think about the tribes, we're going through the Bible challenge right now. Is Asher part of the northern kingdom of Israel or the southern kingdom of Judah?
It's northern, isn't it?
It is the northern kingdom, yes. Asher is of the northern kingdom. Technically not of Judah. So technically not a Jew. It could have been, although she's in the temple, but she's of a northern tribe here. So she's, that I think is going to be of some importance for us here. She's advanced in years, 84 years old. And she's been a widow. And what are we told next about her?
She's a prophetess.
She's a prophetess. Actually, that's the first thing we're told about us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Prophetess. What does that mean that she's a prophetess?
She speaks the word of God.
Indeed, she does. She speaks the word of the Lord. The Lord will speak through her.
Mm.
And she is, what is she doing when she's there? She does not depart.
Praying and fasting and praying.
Night
Worship
and day.
with fasting and prayer, night and day.
She must have been special because didn't even the priests leave the temple? I mean, she's there all night and day.
Yeah, priests had homes they would go to. You know, priests would work on the priest typically, if you remember in Revelation, we talked about the 24 orders of priests. They would be they would serve twice a year for a week. They would come and then they would take lots and they would determine who would go in, but they would go back to their homes. And yeah, but she's living in the temple courts and she's fasting and praying night and day. And so in that very hour now, she comes and what is she, what
I mean,
is,
so let me just get back to that. So the temple really wasn't a place for homeless people. It was,
well, the temple is, yeah, you're right. The temple is a large complex here. So she's not living, she wouldn't have been in the temple itself,
okay,
but in the temple courts where she would be. The women did not enter into the actual temple itself. The priests were all men. And only the priests were allowed to enter the actual temple. She would have been in the temple courts area. There were parts, I think there's a special part for the women
Yep.
where they would be. And so she would be attending there, worshiping and fasting as close as she could get to the Lord. There, and I guess she was able to live there. They probably would have had some kind of living quarters for some people. I suspect that there would have been some people that lived. It's a big complex. When you think about the church, the first church gathering was thousands of people that were meeting in the temple regularly. And that was just the Christians. That was one particular sect of Judaism at that time. So there's probably tens and tens of thousands of people that are in this area. It's a very large segment there.
I
So
was
she-
surprised to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was surprised to see that it was a woman and not a male prophet.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? I want to
Mhm.
talk about that. I think that's part of the why he includes her in this, because he doesn't have everything she says. She's a prophet, and we're like, okay, but what does she say? He doesn't have a quote from her. But what does he say about her?
She speaks of him who they're waiting for.
The prophetic word of Anna is she speaks of him to all who are waiting for the redemption of Israel. Who's the him?
Messiah.
Messiah.
Of Jesus as the Christ that they've been waiting for. And she gives thanks to God for this. So why do we have Anna here? And you'll notice we have a couple things about Luke. Remember, he says, I'm writing these things to you to confirm to you that you might have full confidence in what you believe.
Mhm.
And he writes like he's bringing forth witnesses
Mhm.
to the person of Christ, of who he is, of who this Jesus is.
Sure.
And in the scriptures, what are we told about witnesses?
2 or 3.
2 or 3 witnesses. Everything must be established by 2 or 3 witnesses. And so even in the temple courts now, he comes in and he chooses 2 witnesses. At his birth, you have Mary and Joseph there witnessing the birth of Jesus, followed by the multitude of the heavenly hosts and the shepherds, heavenly and earthly witnesses coming now as well, declaring this. There's a lot of testimony to the birth of Jesus. And then 8 days later, when they come and they give him his name, we have 2 more witnesses coming. And it's interesting that witnesses were given here. What does Simeon and Anna have in common? Why these 2? That'll be our question here.
where was Simeon from?
Well, let's go back. Simeon,
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Yeah.
Anna, Jerusalem. We're not told, just that he's, I guess he's from Jerusalem. That's all we have about him.
I didn't know if they both had come from the same area.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit was upon them.
Yeah. Let's
Both of them had foreknowledge that Jesus was coming. They were waiting for him.
so both prophets, both waiting for the Messiah, um, both old, for one thing, as well,
Hmm.
and devoted to this work. I mean, the whole purpose of Simeon's life is that the Messiah would be revealed to him before he died. He's waiting for that moment, and now he says, "You can take me in peace. I'm done." And Anna, get the same sense with her. She's old, and she's just kind of, this is her whole purpose, is she's fasting, and the whole thing of fasting is and praying is why do we fast? What's the purpose of fasting? What's going on there?
It's
You know
to it's to focus ourselves on something else other than the ordinary.
It does indeed. It helps you focus on things. But what's the symbolism of fasting? What's the real, when do people fast?
I always thought it was a form of prayer, like a more intense form of praying.
It is. It is definitely. It adds intensity to prayer. But I think of it this way here, is there in the scriptures you will see Jesus is asked by the Pharisees, why do we fast and John and his disciples fast, but you and your disciples don't fast?
Right?
Remember his answer to them?
Yeah, you don't fast when the bridegroom's here. And Isaiah 62, of course, associates the bridegroom with God himself. And
But they will
he says,
fast.
yeah, there's coming a day when you will fast when the bridegroom's not here anymore.
Yeah. But fasting is accompanies grief and longing. You don't fast at a wedding. That's a day of celebration. That's when you feast. So feasting, there's this pattern in the scriptures of feasting and fasting, and to know when to do what. You have weddings and funerals. You feast at a wedding, you fast at a funeral. There's a sense at a funeral that, in a sense that this is a time of grief, of longing, of loss, and crying out to God. And then there's a time of celebration when he answers, and you give him thanks, and you feast in that day. And that was one of the problems with the Pharisees, where they were professional fasters. That's what their whole scheme was about fasting. Their whole purpose for being there was fasting, and in hopes that the Messiah would come in response to their fasts. And then when he does come, they don't know how to not fast, how to rejoice when he comes, and they resent him for basically, how can you, it's almost like they revel in their grief and they make a business out of it in some sorts. But both of them here, there's a fasting and longing that you'll notice comes to completion when Jesus arrives. So that Simeon can say, "Take me in peace now. I'm finished here." And Anna can give thanks. After all her fasting, she gives thanks because her longings, her hunger has been satisfied. That Jesus has arrived here.
They should be considered a prayer warrior.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's when you really pray, isn't it? You really, when you are when you're feeling that loss and longing, that pain, that's when you pray. Other than that, you just say prayers. I know for me, it's like, when I'm feeling pretty good, when everything's kind of right in the world, I'll say my prayers, but I don't really pray until I feel the stress, the agony, the terrors, the longing, the grief. That's when I really pray. And that's what you can see with Anna. Yeah.
In regards to the fasting, wasn't it also when Jesus sent the disciples out, in pairs, and they came back and said that there were some things that they couldn't heal, and Jesus said to them that some things require prayer and fasting.
Yeah, this kind can only come out by prayer and fast, by prayer, and then some little footnotes say and fasting too. Yeah.
Mm.
That it's there are some demons, some that I've given you the authority to cast out, and you can do it, but then the others you just have to pray, and they can only come out by prayer, and the fasting kind of ends an intensity to it. Yeah. So they're also they're both prophets, both waiting for the Messiah, both old and devoted, fasting and longing that comes to completion. And one more thing I was going to think about that. So, but these two witnesses to the Messiah, you'll notice a couple things about them. Where is Simeon from?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
From Jerusalem. So you're understanding he's probably a Jew from Jerusalem. That's the south, and Anna is not from Jerusalem.
Right.
She is from Asher,
Which is way up their side, way up near Lebanon.
which is up in the north.
Mm.
These two witnesses, you have not just a man, but you have a man and woman testifying to him. You can see that I think that's important too, is that he is the Luke will have a lot of women in his story as well. And these are the unlikely ones that you would expect. But again, stressing from the very beginning, his salvation, what does Genesis say about the Savior will come? Who will crush the head of the serpent?
Woman.
The
This-
son of,
No, the seed of a woman.
yeah, the seed of the woman. And also just, I think, given these two, these are two people of sorrow. They're not of wealth, comfort. They're not of the higher classes. She's a widow, even a widow of the lowliest places. And that's a big theme for Luke, is he is writing this as a Gentile. He's reminding us this Jesus is Savior of the lowly. He comes to the lowest places, as we saw here. He will cause the rising and falling of many. Didn't we see Simeon say that?
Mhm.
And here we have a rising, what's lower than a widow, one who's been a widow all her life, who has no children, and she is being lifted up and exalted before us. And what's higher than, I don't know, how about an emperor at the beginning, who is merely a pawn in this game, who just enables the child to be born where he's supposed to be born. So you see this, we should be, who, when you think about it, it's like, if you're a historian, you don't care about a widow in Jerusalem. You just don't care. I want to learn about Caesar Augustus and Quirinius. These are the people I care about. And Herod. That's where the intrigue is. That's the kind of things where you're going to get your HBO miniseries about these guys. No one cares about an old man and a widow. No one cares, except for God and the Messiah. And no one cares about shepherds in a field. And yet he sends this whole slew of angels to appear to them. Again, to the lowest of places he comes. I think it's a beautiful scene with this, with Anna here. We don't know exactly, we don't know what she said or how she said it. We just know she testifies, and she is given the honor and the privilege of being with Simeon, to be the first to sort of officially welcome Jesus, as he's given the name Jesus, and he's dedicated in the temple. So, any questions on that? We'll continue here from.
I just have one quick question. It says that she's fasting day and night.
Yeah.
I'm also looking, and the scripture doesn't tell us this. I'm looking at the practical aspect. If you don't have anything to eat or drink like forever, you're gonna have serious medical issues. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did they have people that would bring food to her from time to time? What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They would have. Now the Muslims, when they fast, they do strictly no food, no water.
During daylight hours.
The daylight hour. That's for Ramadan. That's not how that people fasted. Now Moses fasted for 40 days without food or water, but that was a miracle of God to provide him.
Right.
Yeah, that's on top of Mount Sinai.
Right.
So fasting day and night. I think there are many different kinds of fasts that you can do. There
Uh-huh.
are water fasts. There are fasts where you just fast from meat. You just cut out certain foods. We're
Mm,
not told exactly how she fasted,
no,
but
okay.
just that it was a regular
Occurrence.
occurrence for her, that was there was emphasizing that she is continually in prayer and fasting. She's devoting herself fully to this work. This is her whole purpose of living, is
Mm,
to worship, to fast, to pray, to cry out to God for the Messiah to come.
It's more like she
Mm.
does sustenance eating and drinking, but not for pleasure.
Yeah, she's not a woman of leisure. She's not, so she is, it's almost like, you know what it is? I think she lives perpetually as a widow,
mm,
like in the black, wearing the black and sackcloth and ashes. That's her whole life is one of longing, and that's sort of as a sign. So when he comes, and the prophetess Anna, so you can imagine she's in the temple, and for all these years she's been there.
mm,
She would have been known if she's a prophetess. People know who this woman is, and people can see, and she's testifying, and and you see her year after year. Every time you go to the temple, oh, there's that crazy lady. There's Anna, this woman,
yeah.
and all she does is just fast and pray, and you wonder at that. And then all of a sudden, with the birth of Jesus, she sings a new tune, and she gives thanks and tells everyone that he's here, he's arrived.
Mm,
It's almost like she's the spiritual watchman at the gates, waiting, the first one to see and to welcome the king when he arrives, and to tell everybody he's here, heralding his coming.
It just kind of struck me that the reason they probably say in here that made a point to say fasting day and night it might have been because I mean, I always hear about people that fast all day, but then they gorge themselves at night,
Yeah.
and this is not what she was doing.
No, no. Yeah, exactly right. Again, what it looks like, I don't know. I'm sure they had ways of doing it. And again, fasting doesn't mean you're completely eliminating all foods and all drinks. It could be simply, all she drinks is water. She does not drink anything else, any wine or milk and like that. And maybe her feasting, her eating is very meager meals, very simple meals. Maybe there's no meat. Maybe she's vegetarian. We don't know, but there's some measure of fasting she does.
I have
Uh,
an aunt, or had an aunt, she's passed now, that well into her late 80s, she would fast twice a week, where she would have water,
mhm.
and then she would have like a one meal of bread during the day, and that was it for those 2 days every week.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So let's continue here. Next paragraph here, a quick one. Jack, you want to get that for us? 39 and 40.
And when they had performed everything according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth. And the child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him.
Yeah. All right. So when they had, who was the they they're referring to in 39?
The
Mary
Mary and Joseph.
Yeah. So
and
Mary
Jesus.
fulfill everything according to the law, fulfill the law. And
Of
they
the
return.
Lord. I
Yes.
like that.
The Lord. And they returned to Galilee, to Nazareth. So how does this? Let's try to fix this. What about the wise men and the trip to Egypt and all that stuff?
Another one of those things that happened, and others talked about it, but Luke chose not to.
Luke doesn't bother with it. That's pretty interesting stuff. But he says, that's not his purpose in writing this, is to get into that. Matthew covers it well enough. But, after we can say, look, after his birth, they're still in Bethlehem. They're actually going to be in Bethlehem for a few years before they return to Galilee. They're going to be there for a couple years, and Herod's going to seek to kill the child, and they're going to head over to Egypt until Herod dies. Then they're going to go to Nazareth. But for Luke, he's like, you know what? That's not important. Important part for us is that what is the important part for Luke? He says a few things about Jesus and in this passage here. So first he says, they fulfill the law.
And what does that mean? That they did the Passover feast?
The census, isn't that the reason they were there?
Well,
it's
no,
the law according to the Lord, not
Oh.
to the
yeah,
government.
that is all the requirements of the firstborn son in the law, that he
Mhm.
needed to be dedicated to the Lord. They had to offer sacrifices for him. They'd have to come into the temple. He'd have to be circumcised. So that would be, he would be circumcised and sacrifices offered for the firstborn. That's the fulfillment of the law as far as that goes. So he fulfills that. But then it's something else about this Jesus.
He grew and became strong, filled with wisdom.
The child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom. Let's talk about that a little bit here. The child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom. What does that say about him? What does that mean?
He was normal.
Yeah, he is a real human child. He grows like any child does. He becomes strong like a child does. He is not it's not this mystical baby in a sense, this, with all he grows in strength, he grows with wisdom. And in the favor of God was upon him. Even the filled with wisdom is an interesting phrase. I don't know if you know what wisdom means here. I'll give you a hint. It doesn't mean that he was smart.
Mhm.
What does it mean to be filled with wisdom?
Filled with knowledge of the gospel, well, not of the gospel, of the Bible.
Even more than that, there are lots of people who know the Bible inside and out who are not wise.
I think wisdom in general is the application of knowledge.
Yeah, this is a moral quality of him. I mean, I'm sure he's smart. There's no question, but that's not the emphasis of it. It's wisdom. What is the beginning of wisdom?
The fear of the Lord.
Yeah. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And wisdom is that ability to make godly choices, to not just to know what to do that is pleasing to God, but the ability to do it. There are lots, again, the fool can have all the answers, but still, if he's not able to do what he knows to do, he's a fool.
Like Solomon asked for the wisdom to be a good king.
Yeah. Yeah. Not just to know the answers, of know what to do, but to be able to do it. I mean, think about that. How many times in your life have you known exactly what you need to do? You just lacked the strength, the courage to do it because it's scary. Doing the right thing, can get you hated. Doing the right thing can cost you greatly. And so that's the hard thing. Oftentimes it's not that hard to know what you need to do. Like if you have someone who's like a drug addict and you're like, he knows that he shouldn't do drugs. He knows it. It's not like, oh, I didn't realize that. My goodness, drugs are bad for me. I shouldn't do these things. Oh, thank you for telling me. I didn't know that. He knows it. The problem is lacking the ability at that point to do anything about it. He lacks the ability and the strength, the grace, whatever it is he needs to actually live in a righteous, good way. And so with Christ, he's filled with wisdom, speaks to his character. He is, and that the favor of God is upon him. He's pleasing to the Lord. It's not grace that's upon him. It's the favor of God. Why is it not grace?
Because he does deserve it.
Exactly right. He deserves it. He is pleasing to the Lord, and rightfully so. Whereas for us, it's grace. You know, if we receive favor from the Lord, it's grace. We don't deserve it. But he is one who does. He's filled with wisdom and truly pleasing to the Lord. So let's take our next scene here then. This is an interesting one. Let me start a new page so we can see it all together. Hang on a second. Page break. Okay. So let's pick up verses 41 down to 52. Elizabeth, would you read that for us?
Sure. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended and they were returning, boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem searching for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." And he said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And he went down with them. And he went down to them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man.
Yeah, great. All right. So this is an interesting scene that we have here. And I'm going to say there's some foreshadowing going on in this scene as well. Let's take a look at the setting of it. What's the setting? Where is this happening? When is this happening? What's going on? How does it start?
In Jerusalem again. For
At the
for
Passover.
Passover.
Okay, the setting again is in Jerusalem at the feast of the Passover. And what's the Passover feast about?
About when they were led out of Egypt by the angel of death passing over their homes.
Yeah. When the Lord saved the Israelites, by means of what did he use to save them?
Blood.
Yes.
On the
Passover
doorpost.
lamb, right? The blood, sacrificial lamb, the sacrifice for them. In place of the firstborn son, they sacrifice the lamb, and they are saved from death and judgment. And that's what they celebrate, and they're in Jerusalem. And when is this happening? How many years later is this? What is this?
12.
Well,
Okay. Jesus is 12 years old. Significance of 12 years old?
12 apostles.
There are 12
All
apostles,
tribes.
12 tribes. 12 is the number
12
of
lampstands.
God's people. As far as as an age of 12 years old. Anyone know the significance of that?
I mean, would he have been considered a man at that point?
If so, this is about, I think it's 12 or 13.
In the bar mitzvah.
Yeah, is the bar mitzvah. 12 or 13 is the bar mitzvah. You know what bar mitzvah means?
Becoming a man.
Yeah, it means this is sort of your entry into adulthood. The name bar mitzvah actually means something. Means son. Bar is son. And mitzvah, do you know what mitzvah means? It's son of the commandment. So they are, again, emphasizing under the law now. This is when a boy or girl, it's a bat mitzvah for a girl,
Mm.
becomes a man. And so this is their moment. So we have this significant moment here of Jesus, 12 years old. And what happens now? They're returning now after the feast. So the parents, the family returns
And
home.
Jesus is apparently not with them. They didn't realize it for a while.
Jesus stays behind.
But it wasn't just like a small family, the four of them, the three of them, it was the whole village that
Yeah.
basically came to the feast together.
Yeah. And here's the question here. How long was he missing?
3 days.
Yeah. So for 3 days, he is lost to them. You can imagine how frantic that would make them feel
Mm.
to his family.
Where does it say 3 days?
Verse 46, after 3 days,
Oh, yeah, okay, all right, thanks.
they found him in the temple. They find him in the temple. And what's he doing in the temple?
Teaching.
Jesus in the temple, it says he is
Asking questions, and they're amazed at his answers.
he's sitting among the teachers, listening and asking questions. And they're amazed at his understanding. That would be quite a scene. I have no idea what that would look like. His mother, Mary, asks him to explain himself. What's going on? Why have you treated us this way? And what is his response?
Didn't you know I was supposed to be in my father's house?
Yeah. Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?
So do you think angels were teaching him through his whole childhood?
I don't know how, and they would have certainly taken him to synagogues. He would have been hearing the word from the synagogues. I think with Christ,
He was born with it, maybe an innate knowledge.
I don't know. I mean, one thing the advantage he has over us is that he is without sin. So there's no, he is not going to be prone to misunderstandings or biases or the deceptions one of the reasons that we learn so poorly is we are deceived. That we think we know and we understand things, and oftentimes it takes usually a good beating from the world to teach us otherwise, right? Christ didn't need to waste all that time being beaten down and humbled. I mean, he would have been like a sponge, I suppose. I mean, it's a mystery. We're not told how he gains this information, whether does God come to him like he does to the prophets and reveal things to him in dreams and visions? Does he have a special communion with the Father that during that time where God even speaks to him directly like he does in the Gospels at times?
But we run into people today even that, you'll have like a 12-year-old kid that can do math that people are like, you don't even need a calculator, you just do this and people have talents, and if Jesus is here to teach us, then I would have thought that he would have a talent for learning and understanding the Bible.
Yeah. But I think he would be taught. He would not be something an innate, because he's fully human. So he's going to be a true baby, a true child, a true infant. Every stage of it, he's going to feel and experience. There's no cheating on his part. but it is a humanity that is not tainted with sin. And so he has an intellect that is not tainted by sin either. And he has an emotions and a heart that is perfect. So there's going to be a lot of good learning it's going to happen, that will be beyond what we can imagine. It could be that God revealed things to him spiritually that in ways that he maybe dealt with other prophets too. We're not told how he gained such knowledge, and the thing is, again, he's not going to academies. He's not going to he's a carpenter's son. He's just going to synagogue with everybody else. But I think the point of the passage is not so much of, I wish Luke would tell us how he learned stuff, but he doesn't.
Mm.
But rather, what's the point of this story right now?
Well, that he is human. That's important, that he's fully human.
He is fully human.
And he realizes, I'm looking at the Reformation Study Bible here, so I'm cheating. But it says that in his comment, don't you know I have to be in my Father's house, that he is already aware at 12 years old that there was something very special between him and the Father.
Yeah. So he is fully human, and that he says to his own parents that I am in my Father's house.
Mm.
Okay. That Jesus is the
He
Son of
knows, he knows who he is.
Yeah, I mean, Joseph knows he doesn't own the temple, so he must have said, you know what?
Yeah, it's a mystery to them exactly what's being said here, but they should have known that, shouldn't they?
Yes,
Sure.
Right. Why should they know that already?
they were
They were
both,
told that.
Yeah, then Joseph knows he's not the father, first of all.
Yeah, Joseph knows it, but Mary was told specifically by the angel that he would be the Son of the Most High.
Right.
So you should know that. Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? She has been given revelation that she didn't understand and has treasured, but now it's hopefully starting to come clear. They still don't quite understand what's happening, and it's a lot to take in. Again, if you're a teenage girl and you're told that the child you're about to give will be called the Son of the Most High, who will sit on his Father's throne forever, that sounds amazing, but what does that actually look like? What does it mean? And he didn't come out all shiny with a halo around his head. He came out like a regular baby, great baby, but a regular baby. How does this baby, that I have to change this baby's diaper? I've got to feed this child. I have to breastfeed this child. I have to, protect this child from the dangers of this world. How is this child the son of the living God? That's the mystery of it. Yeah.
at that time, did they refer to God as the Father?
No, that was the other part too.
Yeah,
Because he says, I'm in the Father's house, and maybe that's what they didn't understand, what he meant for the
Yeah.
Father.
Yeah, they didn't to be calling God. This is the first time
you know,
God is referred to as Father.
This is one area that, I mean, I understand it and it still bothers me a little, only in that, I mean, if I had done, Jesus, we know, didn't sin. Well, if I had done that, I'd have got a whopping.
Yeah. Now, again, I want to come back to the story here of why does he do it this way? Why does he put his parents, because that was the question they're asking. Why did you treat us this way? Why didn't you tell us? Why would you put us through this thought that we lost you? And for 3 days.
So it's foreshadowing when they lost him at the cross, and then he
Yeah.
was back in 3 days.
Yeah, so much of the birth narrative here, even as the Messiah has come, has been one of referencing to his death, from the swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. A sword will pierce your heart also. And now we have one who is lost to them for 3 days, and then he appears again. And when he appears, he's submissive to them, emphasizing that and Jesus is truly human, but is without sin. submissive, and increasing in wisdom and stature and favor with God. And favor. It's a beautiful focus here, giving details to help us see the full humanity of Jesus. He really has come in the flesh in every way. He's a human being from beginning to end. He's not some angel in disguise. He is truly one of us. And yet he is the righteous one, and also he's the Passover lamb. He's the son that's going to be sacrificed for us. And there'll be that 3 days missing, rising again in the temple, in the Father's house.
It's interesting because all the gospel writers kind of they tell us the basics of who Christ is with stories like this, and then we don't hear anything again until he's 30.
Yeah.
Now the Gnostics came up with stories that occurred when he was a teenager and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We know that's not biblical, but it seems like God tells us. He doesn't tell us everything he could have told us. He tells us what we need to know. So he establishes the basics.
Yeah.
In this case, is humanity, for example. And that's all we need to know. We don't need to know what he was doing when he was 18 and 20. We just need to know what he subsequently does when he's 30.
Yeah. Once he begins his ministry, and the in both Matthew and Luke, the birth narratives are sort of prologues to the story. There's a lot of foreshadowing in the prologues. They're going to set the themes. They're going to help you kind of put you in a position to understand where this is all going. Matthew does the same thing. You can see the same themes in Matthew's account. They're different stories, but you see the whole thing of the joy of his birth, and then you have the oppression of Herod and the death of the sons in Bethlehem and the fleeing to Egypt, and Matthew used the same picture here of out of Egypt I called my son, reminding them of the Passover. And for Luke, he mentions the Passover of when this happens. That's not an insignificant detail. This is at the Passover feast. They're all thinking about these things, about how God saves, and through the death of a son, bringing them out of darkness, bringing them into the promised land. And so we see a repeat of that. So Luke and Matthew, both in their prologues, have the same kind of themes. There's a joy, and there is also a sadness and a death that goes along with it, because that's how God is going to save us, not just through the glory of his son, but through the death and then the resurrection of his son, as we'll see. And if you remember, Luke's gospel ends where Jesus says, "This is what will be proclaimed, that the Christ should suffer, and in the third day rise, and repentance and forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name." The death and the resurrection. So anyway, that's what we'll break here. It's a good place to break. It's a little bit earlier, but we'll pick up chapter 3 next time we meet here. Any last comments on this before we break? Okay. Let me pause. Oh, shoot. Okay.